The Zelveran Combat Academy had stood for 11,000 years, its amphitheater carved from black stone quarried on a world that no longer existed. Rows of alien cadets, chitinous Threll, towering Korgoth, sinuous Avellini, sat in concentric circles around the sparring floor, all of them waiting for the same thing. They were waiting to watch the human fail. Commander Zyrex stood at the center of the floor, forearms crossed behind his back, his exoskeleton catching the harsh light from the overhead projectors. He was Academy Instructor, 3rd rank, decorated in 7 campaigns against the Skarn Empire. He had broken bones, many kinds of bones, from many kinds of species, and he had never once respected a human in his 3 decades of teaching. Voss, Zyrex said, his translator crackling slightly on the consonant. Step forward. Darien Voss rose from the cadet benches. He was unremarkable by any human standard, 5'11", lean from training rather than bulk, brown hair cut short, the kind of face that wouldn't stand out in a crowd back on Earth. Among the cadets here, surrounded by beings with armored plates and extra limbs and eyes that saw in ultraviolet, he looked almost fragile. That was the joke of it. Humans always looked fragile until you actually hit one. You require a demonstration of close combat technique, Zyrex continued, addressing the room rather than Darien. Species, human. Classification, baseline organic, no natural weapons, no natural armor, average physical output 30% below median academy applicant. He let that hang in the air, the way every alien instructor liked to hang it. And yet humanity insists on retaining what they call martial arts instead of relying solely on technology. I am curious why. A few cadets chuckled. The Threll directly behind Darien made a clicking sound that the translators didn't bother rendering, it didn't need to. Darien walked down to the floor without hurrying. He'd been through this before. Every species in the galaxy had their own theory about why humans were the weakest combatants in known space, and every species loved explaining that theory to a human's face. He'd stopped being offended by it around the 3rd week of training. Mostly he just found it useful. People who underestimated you told you exactly how they planned to fight you. With respect, Commander, Darien said, I think the question answers itself once you see it. Zyrex's mandibles clicked, the Zelveran equivalent of a raised eyebrow. Confidence. Humans are known for it. Less known for backing it up. He gestured to the heavy combat table at the edge of the ring, reinforced plasteel, the kind used for weapons maintenance, built to take blast damage and absorb impacts from training drones. Strike that. Barehanded. Show me this demonstration you're so eager to give. The room went quiet in the particular way a room goes quiet when everyone expects to watch something humiliating. Plasteel didn't break. That was the entire point of plasteel. The Academy used it because Korgoth recruits could throw their full bulk into it during training accidents and the table would still be standing afterward, slightly dented, completely structurally sound. Zyrex had picked it deliberately. He wanted to watch the human flinch, or hurt himself trying, or, best case, from the instructor's perspective, simply refuse and lose face in front of the entire room. Darien studied the table for a moment. Not nervously. The way an engineer studies a problem. Commander, he said, can I ask what close combat means to your species? Zyrex's antennae twitched with something like amusement. It means using your body as the weapon, cadet. A concept I assumed was self-evident. Right. See, that's the thing. Darien rolled his shoulders, loosened his stance, the kind of small movements that meant nothing to eyes that had never watched a human fighter warm up. For most species in this academy, the body is what it is. You've got natural armor, natural blades, natural strength ratios that don't change much no matter how hard you train. A Korgoth punch is a Korgoth punch whether the Korgoth trained for 1 year or 20. The biology does most of the work. And humans? Humans are unfinished, Darien said. That's not an insult. It's the whole trick. We don't have claws, so we built knives 100,000 years ago and never stopped building. We don't have armor, so we figured out how to move so the hit doesn't land where it hurts. We don't have strength, so we figured out how to put all of it, every gram of mass, every joint, every fraction of a second of timing, into one point smaller than a coin. He looked up at Zyrex. We've had less time as a spacefaring species than almost anyone in this room. But we've had 2 million years to figure out how to break things that are stronger than we are. That's not biology, Commander. That's a skill we built because we had to. Words, Zyrex said. I asked for a demonstration. Right, Darien said. Sorry. Long way of explaining why this isn't going to be what you expect. He turned to the table. What followed took less than a second and a half, though several cadets in the room would later swear, watching the footage afterward in slow motion, that it felt longer, that there was a strange suspended moment where the room understood, collectively, that something had gone very wrong with their expectations. Darien didn't wind up. He didn't telegraph. He shifted his weight back onto his rear leg, rotated through his hips in a motion that looked almost lazy, and drove his palm forward and down into the surface of the table, not a punch, not a strike anyone in the room recognized as a strike, because none of them trained that way. Every ounce of momentum from his hips, his shoulder, his arm, collapsed into a single point of contact no larger than his palm, timed to arrive at exactly the moment his body weight stopped moving forward and started moving down. The plasteel didn't dent. It cracked clean across the middle, a jagged seam splitting the reinforced material like dry clay, and the table folded inward on itself with a shriek of stressed metal before the legs buckled and the whole thing collapsed to the floor in two ruined halves. The amphitheater went absolutely silent. Darien straightened up, shook out his hand, that part hurt, plasteel splinters didn't care about good technique, and turned back to Commander Zyrex with the calm, unbothered expression of someone who had simply finished a chore. That's close combat for a human, Commander, he said. We don't out-armor anything. We don't outclaw anything. What we do is figure out exactly where a thing is weakest, and then we put everything we have into that one point, at exactly the right moment, harder than the thing was ever designed to survive. He glanced down at the wreckage of the table. Took us a couple 100,000 years of beating things to learn that. Figured the Academy might as well see the finished version. For a long moment, Zyrex said nothing. His mandibles had stopped clicking entirely, and his forearms had uncrossed from behind his back, an old Zelvran combat reflex, the body preparing for a threat it hadn't consciously acknowledged yet. Then, slowly, he looked from the broken table to the human standing calmly in front of him, and something shifted in the old instructor's posture. Not fear. Recalculation. 30 years, Zyrex said finally, I have taught this academy that humans are the weakest species to ever achieve starflight. Low output. No natural weapons. No natural defense. He gestured at the ruined plasteel. Cadet Voss. How many of your species can do that? Pretty much all of us, sir, Darien said. Eventually. That's the part you're not getting. We're not strong. We're not fast. We're not tough. He smiled slightly. We're just really, really good at figuring out exactly how to hurt something stronger than us. Every single one of us learns that, one way or another, because for 2 million years, that was the only way our species survived at all. He looked around the silent amphitheater, at the rows of cadets who had come to watch a human fail, and who had instead watched a human walk up to something engineered to be unbreakable and break it on the first try. Anyway, Darien said, stepping back toward the benches. Same time tomorrow, Commander? Zyrex stared at the wreckage of the table for a long moment, then at the rows of suddenly very attentive cadets, and finally, for the first time in 3 decades of teaching, allowed himself a slow, genuine click of respect. Same time tomorrow, he agreed. And Voss bring 2 tables.